Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel and thanks for stopping by. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie and today I have 5 holiday themed DIYs that you can make for less than $5 a piece. Let's get started. DIY number 1 is a rustic framed winter scene. For this project I used an 8x10 canvas and a medium-sized gift bag with a gorgeous winter scene, both from Dollar Tree. I started by removing the canvas from the wooden frame. I used a sharp utility knife and cut along the outside edges of the staples all the way around the frame so that I could easily remove the canvas fabric. Once I had the canvas cut all the way around, I removed the canvas fabric, then went back and removed all the leftover canvas pieces that were left under the staples on the back of the frame. I used a pair of pliers to remove the more stubborn pieces of canvas that I couldn't remove by hand. I also removed any staples that came up while removing the canvas, but did not worry about the other staples as they won't be seen once the project is complete. After I had the canvas removed, I painted the frame with one coat of apple barrel paint in the color Burnt Umber. Once the frame was dry, I decided which side of the gift bag that I wanted to use. One side has glitter on the rooftops and some of the trees, and the other side does not have any glitter. Now, I'm not a glitter girl, but I decided to go with the glittered side since this is going to be part of my holiday decor this year, and it looks more magical with the snow glistening. When I was settled on what side of the gift bag to use, I placed the frame over the area that I wanted as the frame picture. Then I took a black Sharpie marker and traced around the outside of the frame so that I would know where to cut the gift bag. Then I cut out the picture, cutting on the inside of the line, and then I trimmed the picture up until it fit nicely and nothing was showing around the edges of the frame. After I had the picture cut to size, I used hot glue to attach it to the frame. When I was putting the hot glue onto the frame, I made sure to put it far enough back along the line of staples so that when I pressed the picture down, none of the hot glue would seep out onto the front of the picture and create an eyesore. To finish off this project, after I had the picture glued onto the frame, I took a small piece of twine and created a hanger by stretching the twine along the top piece of the frame and using a generous amount of hot glue to hold it in place. I wanted to not be able to see the twine when the picture was hung, so I hot glued the twine where it was pulled tight so that when it was hung on the wall, the picture would not sag. I love how this picture turned out, so much so that I ended up making 3 more with some of the other gorgeous gift bags that Dollar Tree has this year. I made each one of these frame prints for only $2 a piece, and I think they made an absolutely gorgeous set that I can't wait to display this holiday season. I want to take a minute to say that today's video is part of a monthly challenge playlist hosted by 2 fabulous ladies, Missy from Crafty Cove and Emily from Farm Charm Chic, along with their guest host this month, Connie from Connie's Creative Creations. These 3 women are so incredibly talented, so be sure to check them out. I will leave links to their channels in the description box below. Every month, Missy and Emily host a challenge for us to create 5 DIYs that cost $5 or less each to make, and this month's theme is home decor for the holidays. Once you get done with my video, make sure you check out the playlist that I will link in the description box below for even more beautiful holiday home decor on a budget. With all that said, let's jump into DIY number 2, which is a light-up Christmas house scene. For this project, I started with a light-up Christmas house that I picked up last year at Dollar Tree. They do have houses again this year. I had already primed it gray for a project that I never got around to finishing. First, I used Waverly chalk paint in the color crimson and gave the siding and bricks on the house as well as the bow on the wreath 2 coats of paint. Next, I used Folk Art acrylic paint in the color bright green to paint the wreath and very bottom of the 2 trees. Then I took Waverly chalk paint in the color white and painted everything that I had not already painted red or green except for the roof portions of the house. This is what the house looked like after I had it completely painted. For the roof of the house, I used one of the microfiber car cloths from Dollar Tree. I started by cutting off all the finished edges around the car cloth. Then, making sure the fuzzy side of the cloth was showing, I started placing the snow on top of the house. I started by cutting a small area in the cloth so that it would go around the chimney, then trim the rest of the cloth to roughly the same size as the top of the house. After I had the cloth cut to shape and size, I used hot glue to attach it to the roof of the house, making sure I used enough hot glue in certain areas to maintain the shape and contours of the roof. Once the cloth was glued down, I cut off any excess hanging over the edge and then continued to cover the roof with the cloth until it was all covered. After I had the entire roof area covered, I went back with a smaller piece of cloth and covered the top of the chimney, again making sure the fuzzy side of the cloth is exposed so that it looks like snow. Then I used some smaller strips of cloth and hot glue to create an overhang of snow around the edges of the roof. Here is how the house looked once I had the roof covered and trimmed up all the cloth. I think it turned out beautiful. Next, using a piece of cardboard I had laying around, I placed the house where I wanted it to sit and took a Sharpie marker and drew out the shape I wanted for the base of the scene, and then I cut it out. Once I had the base shape cut, I set the house where I wanted it to sit and used a marker to mark the front and back of the house so I would know where to place the tea light. Next, I took the tea light and placed it in the center of the two marks and traced around it. Then, using a sharp utility knife, I cut out the circle. Next, I take the rest of the cloth and, again keeping the fuzzy side up, I hot glue it to the base, making sure to add some hot glue and fabric around the edges to give it a nice finished look. After I have the cloth glued down to the base, I use a pair of sharp scissors and cut out the hole for the tea light and trim the cloth around the edges to give it a finished look. To assemble the winter scene, I placed the house over the hole in the base, making sure it lined up correctly, and then used hot glue to adhere the house to the base. I just used hot glue here, but if you wanted to use a stronger adhesive, you could, but the hot glue holds really well against the cloth and cardboard. Next, I used a set of green miniature bottle brush trees from Dollar Tree to add a little more decoration to this piece. I placed a small tree in front of the house and the larger tree beside the house, and then used a generous amount of hot glue to glue them into place. Then, to finish off this project, I took an LED tea light candle I had in my stash and placed it inside the house. I am so happy with how this turned out. I think it looks absolutely stunning and not like it was made from Dollar Tree items. This piece cost me right at $3 to make. I can definitely see using more of these houses and trees on a bigger piece of cardboard for a gorgeous winter village. Moving on to DIY number 3, this one has to be one of the cleanest, messiest projects I've ever done. It's also my favorite from today's video. Let's make some soap snowballs with a cute container. For this project, I used a 3-pack of Jergens white bar soap and a cheese grater, both from Dollar Tree, and a small mixing bowl I had on hand. First, I took the cheese grater and grated one of the bars of soap. You can use any soap you like for this project as long as it's white. Unless you want different colored snowballs, then you can use any color you want. After I had the bar of soap shredded, I added a tiny amount of warm water to the bowl and mixed it up with my hand so that the soap pieces would start sticking together. You don't want to add too much water to start with because it will make the soap start melting and then it takes a long time for the snowballs to dry out. You can always add more water if needed, but you can't take the water back out once it's added, so be mindful of that when adding the water. Once I had added the water and mixed it up, I started making the snowballs. I worked the soap in my hand until it was the consistency of Play-Doh or clay, then I rolled up the snowball and set it on a piece of parchment paper to dry. While I was rolling the snowballs, I made sure not to roll them out too smooth. I wanted them to still have a rough texture so that they would more closely resemble a real snowball. I was able to get roughly 7 snowballs of various sizes from each bar of soap, ending up with roughly 21 snowballs. While the soap snowballs were drying, I took a tall vase that I picked up at Walmart in the floral section for 97 cents and cleaned the outside of it really well with some rubbing alcohol. Once the vase was dry, I took a design I had cut out on my Cricut using some scrap vinyl I had in my stash and placed it onto the glass. If you don't have a vinyl cutting machine, you can still create this cute vase by using stickers, stencils, or hand painting the design onto the glass. I am no artist by any means, so when I hand paint a design on glass, I print off the design I want, tape it to the inside of the glass, and hand paint the design onto the outside of the glass, like I'm coloring in a coloring book. I showed this hand painting technique in more detail in my Thanksgiving turkey video. If you want to see the process, go check out that video. I'm really happy with the way the vase looks with the vinyl, and I think it's cute and fun all at the same time. Then, after letting the snowballs dry for about 2 hours, I put them into the vase and that was it. This project was super quick and easy to do, and it was really fun. Like I said, it's hands down the cleanest, messy project I've ever done. This would be a project that would be so fun to do with older kids or grandkids as well. I just love how this project turned out. These little snowball soaps are going to look so cute sitting on the sink in my guest bathroom this holiday season. And best of all, this entire project only cost me $1.97. Jumping right into DIY number 4, a Joy canvas wall decor piece. For this project, I started with 2 5x7s and 1 8x10 canvas from Dollar Tree. First, I took a ruler and starting at the top of the canvas, I drew out evenly spaced lines to create a faux shiplap look. I repeated this step on all 3 canvases. Next, I took a baby wipe and rubbed the pencil marks of the lines to blur them. Again, I repeated this step on all 3 canvases. Then I took apple barrel paint in the color Country Gray and a coarse brush from Dollar Tree and sort of dry brush to paint all over the front and sides of the canvas. There was absolutely no rhyme or reason to my madness when applying the paint to the canvases, but I did try to paint a little bit darker on the pencil lines and then a little bit lighter between the lines. but that's about the extent of my intentions while painting these canvases. Once I had the paint on the canvas the way I liked it, I again took the same baby wipe and blended the paint into the canvas. I did the same technique on all 3 canvases. To finish off painting these canvases, I took apple barrel paint in the color black and a smaller coarse brush, and again dry brush parts of the front and sides of the canvas. However, with the black paint, I only made short marks and circles between every line. Then I took the same baby wipe I had been using and blended the black paint into the canvas. I repeated this step until I was happy with the way the canvas looked. Then repeated the entire process on all 3 canvases. I really do love how these turned out. I think they sort of look like birchwood, which I'm absolutely obsessed with this holiday season. While the canvases were drying, I took one of the large Joy gift bags from Dollar Tree and cut out the word Joy, doing my best to keep as much detail as I could intact. I used a pair of sharp scissors and a sharp utility knife to do so. Once I had the pieces from the gift bag cut out, I centered them on the canvases and used hot glue to glue them down. You can use any adhesive you want to adhere the paper to the canvases, but I just used hot glue and it worked out great for me. Then, to finish up this project, I used hot glue to glue the 3 canvases together. I put the J canvas up just a little bit higher than the O canvas, and then the Y canvas just a bit lower than the O canvas. I tried to get them as even as possible so that this piece would look more balanced. I reinforced all the glue areas with hot glue once the initial glue had set up. If you would feel more comfortable using a stronger adhesive for this part of the project, you can use some E6000 or something along those lines. I just used hot glue for video purposes and it worked out great. And that's it. I am so thrilled with how this project turned out. I think it's going to look beautiful on my mantle this season. Best of all, it only costs $4. Last but certainly not least, DIY number 5, a pair of Christmas mail crates. For this project, I used a set of nesting wood crates that I picked up for $5 at the Target dollar spot. I also used 2 labels I sketched out using DaFont.com Christmas card font, and then some stamp images that I traced from a Google search for Christmas mail. To get the labels ready to transfer, I taped them down to a piece of carbon paper and cut them out. This is my absolute favorite way of transferring images without using vinyl. I used Waverly chalk paint in white and painted the inside and outside of both the wooden crates. Once the crates were dry, I started transferring the images. I started with the larger crate and taped the label down as centered as possible. Then, using a sharp tip pen, I traced the image. This will cause the carbon paper to imprint the image onto the crate and make it easy to paint. It'll be just like coloring in a coloring book, only using paint and a paintbrush instead of crayons or markers. This is what it looked like once the label and carbon paper had been removed. I used folk art chalk paint in rich black and a fine tip paintbrush to paint the words Christmas Wishes and the December 25th stamp up in the right corner. Then I used Waverly chalk paint in crimson to paint the Do Not Open text in the bottom left corner. To paint the snowflakes, I used folk art enamel paint in the color gold. I did have to use 2 coats of this paint to cover the black lines from the carbon paper. That's it for this one, super quick and easy. I repeated the same steps on the smaller crate and its label. I used the same 3 color combinations to paint it as well. I really do love how these crates turned out. They give me a real rustic old world vibe that I'm loving for this holiday season. Best of all, each crate only costs $2.50 to make. Here's one final look at how all of today's projects turned out. Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. Mine was definitely the soap snowballs. Be sure to check out the link to the playlist and to today's wonderful host down in the description box below for even more gorgeous holiday decor on a budget. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Click that little red button and stick around. I'm just getting started on all the fun holiday ideas I have for y'all this year. I'll see y'all next time.